Hey everyone, a suspension video. These Dobinson's springs, getting rid of some of them, putting some other ones in. I've got a whole heap of info already for you, but this video I'm going to make it short and sweet. If it ends up being longer than short, it's because it had more information in it. Top tips and tricks, tools you need, what to do, what not to do, things to avoid. Bada bing if you're changing your suspension or doing a spring upgrade like I just have done a bit of spring swapping lately. These ones on the right, the two on the right are the 329s, heavy duty springs, the highest available for the 150 and 120 Prados. Recently removed those, and the ones on the left is from our 2013 150 Prado, which I knew only had 325s, which in my opinion almost useless. Not useless, but it's not a spring we're going to be using. Springs are for life. If you're happy with the height and the ride and everything like that, there's no need to change them. I want to be clear about that, so don't waste your money thinking you need new springs because your shock absorbers are worn. Some of the tools you might need to do the back of a Toyota Land Cruiser LC 150 like we just worked on, Prado, is a set of gloves. Personally, 18mm ratchet spanner, screwdriver came in handy for a couple of leverage, lining up the sway bar brackets, putting them back on. A set of single hex, like impact sockets, some nice thin ones where possible. This is a set you get from Total Tools, I would say, something action on it. Dual action, whatever they are anyway. What brand are they? Whatever they are. Not saying you go get those, and of course a couple of impact drivers. Let's have a look at the vehicle for some tips and tricks. This is the general tools you need. Oh, and by the way, 17mm if you undo the bottom of the shocker, 12mm for the ABS line brackets and the brake line brackets, and 14mm for the sway bar on the 150. You'll need a 12. So they're the main sizes, 12, 14, 17, and you might need a 17mm. Yeah, the 17 for the bottom of the shocker if you take it off, but we didn't need to this time. So that's your first tip. If you're just changing springs and you've already got suspension in and you want to do a spring swap, do you need to take the shock absorber all the way out? The answer is no, you don't. Now, it might make it easier. It might save scratching them. You got the 18mm at the top ratchet spanner. Don't get your spanner cord in there as one of your top tips, because once that pulls up to a certain height, depending how long, what suspension you're installing, you might be installing something that's longer than this Dobinson's IMS, which is a 50701, is a IMS 50701s, we call them anyway. There's just enough room to get your ratchet spanner back out again. If you put something longer in, careful you don't get your spanner stuck in there, ratcheting it tighter, tighter, tighter as that goes up. If it's not, some of them you can just click it and go the other way. Some it's a turn over, you might get it stuck in there, not good. So with this one, there's a 17mm at the bottom. If you haven't got the shock guard in place, you'd probably just undo the 17, remove the shock absorber out of the way because it'll be easier. But we've got the K-on shock guards for longevity. So couple more extra bolts. So being lazy, I just went, you know what, let me see, because I reckon you can do this. And yeah, just pop it down, pull it down, sit it over here. That's probably why. I don't know if that's a scratch mark there. Maybe it's scratched, knocked around. Probably just the washer up the top here that was rubbing around there anyway. So nothing that I can see or feel at the moment. So full information so you can make sure you make the right decision what you're going to do. Now see the coil spring here when you put it in. You want the end of the spring butted up to the end at the bottom of the differential there, so it's at the front side, and up the top ideally you want those spring helpers, those bump stop things in the middle there, sitting nice and square in the spring, and the spring sitting in the correct position up the top right in the middle. You'll see the circle there anyway, so not too bad. For all the people that want more information, there's a playlist on our YouTube channel here called Suspension Information, funnily enough, and there's a heap of videos there. And up until now, I thought it was all the information you needed, but there's always a couple of questions, and this video is hopefully going to answer those. I'm going to tell you what these springs specs are, why I decided to use them, and how some of the springs we're not going to be using anymore. But first I want to cover, if you're swapping out your rear springs or installing rear suspension, what you need to do. So as I said, remove the rear shocker if you're doing a full replacement. You might leave the bottom one there so you don't have to undo all these extra bolts. No big deal, but it just saves me 3 bolts and it does the job. You will ideally remove that bolt up there. There's that laser, which is the bracket for the ABS lines, which you don't want to damage, just to allow it all to come down a bit more. And that bolt there, which is the bracket for the brake lines, just to allow a bit of movement there. Don't forget to put them back in afterwards. I reckon put a bit of grease or some copperies or anything like that on all your nuts and bolts before you put it back together. and there's no torque specs from me on that. You can look it up, or you can just do it just nice, just like what I do. Now you're also going to need to remove the sway bar, and you can see the copperies on those bolts there now. Right, so sway bar, 2 14 mils come out. You're going to need a jack and a piece of timber or something if you're working on a hoist. If you're on the ground, even better. Just put your stands underneath the body. I'm not going to teach you how to use a jack at the moment, but see here under the body or the chassis, the back of the hoist is under the post. That allows everything to drop down. Therefore, we've got to jack it up when we want to reinstall the shock absorbers and the sway bar. If you're working on the ground, then you just let it hang down. And once again, same thing, you jack it up. It's the same thing, right? Just imagine this is your jack stand. The only difference is you're laying on the ground, something when you're down under here, getting these off. So when you put the jack under here a little bit, just to hold it in place, pop the bolts out, and then jack it up just a little bit. Make sure the car doesn't fall off the stands. Nice level ground. Safety. This is not a safety video, but safety first. And then you can just unhook that bottom there and get these sway bar brackets off. Same thing, putting them back on. You'll need to jack it up and just sort of, you're best doing it from around this side, and you can grab them, pull them towards you and just hook those underneath there before you put the bolts back in. Put some grease on. Don't cross thread them. Don't be in a hurry. Just slow down. Make sure they're straight. Make sure they're well started, quite a few turns. Make sure they look straight before you put any tools on them. And if it doesn't feel right, don't hit it. Getting the springs out. This driver's side's always easier. So generally what you do once you've got your shocker off, your sway bar off and those brackets off, you'll be able, if you've got a helper's good. If you've got 2 people, what you can do, you can get someone over this side if you're working on the ground, get someone to stand on the top of the disc rotor here and push it down for you, give you a bit more room, and your spring will generally come out this way forward towards the front of the vehicle on the driver's side is the easiest way. Once you've got that out, then it makes it easier to get the harder one out, and the direction the harder one comes out, it can't go that way. You've got a fuel tank there, right? So it needs to come out in this gap here. And once again, look at the bottom of the spring and turn it. So you've got to make sure they're installed correctly when you finish, when you put it together like that. But you can turn the spring a little bit. You want the lowest point because there's like a hump. See that hump in the middle? So that's where, see where the spring's rubbed over as I've sort of pushed it in, that sort of thing. You can see where the spring was sort of sitting there. Okay, are we ready? And then on the hoist, you're going to get someone to sort of hang off the rotor here, not bend the metal backing plate, but hang off the rotor. So this side can come down. And the other thing that can happen if you've got 2 helpers, this side can go up, right? And then that just allows, there's a whole heap of articulation. You'll be amazed how much movement there is once you take your shock absorbers out and your sway bar. So don't do that out on the tracks because things will fall to pieces. And then this spring, just lift the bottom out and same replacing around. But don't forget to put those spring helpers, top hats, bump stop, whatever you want to call it. You know, these are bump stops as well, but it's all part of the combination package and they should all stay there and be the correct length. Don't forget to put those back in. Make sure it's in properly, lined up around the right way. Once again, there you can carefully place your jack underneath each side of the diff independently. Try not to do it in the middle because the springs, if they're heavy duty, you could be jacking up the whole car, off the stands, going sideways, all sorts of things, or off the hoist. So just be very careful with that and always be ready to release the jack and drop it back down again if something like that's going to happen. If you're risking it for the biscuit, okay, make sure nobody's under the car unless the vehicle's safe and secured. Like I said, it's not a video on safety and how to jack up a vehicle. It's just a warning. Be careful. Don't do this if you don't know what you're doing. If you watch all the videos, you can learn a lot, and it's pretty straightforward, right? So I think that pretty much covers everything. Don't cross thread those ones when you put them back in, or that one. Don't over tighten with a spanner, you'll bend the brackets. It's good to just use the little impact driver, the one that does about 40 Newton meters, I reckon, if you go all the way. I'm not saying it needs 40, but 40 won't hurt it. The little gun. Zoop, zoop, so don't forget that. Your sway bars, your bottom shockers go on first, and then aim your top through the hole. Let's get back to the top and the best procedure to get that back As together. We said, pop the bottom on first. This is what I do. I compress the shocker down by pushing the bottom on the ground, and I'm pushing on the top here, right? And then I quickly bring it up and I hook the bottom over it because there's a bit of angle going on, right? So it doesn't quite align. There's a bit of twist going on the shocker, okay? So push it, quickly slide it on the shaft at the bottom. I don't put the bolt in, and then I quickly, it's decompressed, it's opening up, right? And I aim this so it goes through a hole, and it's going to just go through the hole, and it's going to stop somewhere about here. And I go, beautiful. Then I put my bottom bolt in, and you can either tighten up straight away or not. I just put it in so it's in. Then what you do, you get your jack in place. You've got this part sticking through just a little bit. Sit your little first bush, rubber bush on top. Jack it a little bit. It comes up a little bit more, right? And then you put your next washer, sit that on, right? If there's enough, put the nut on. If there's not, jack it a couple more pumps, comes up a bit more, get your nut started. And then jack, nut, turn your nut, jack. So that way, this isn't going up too far. And check your tools, your spanners, and whatever the case may be. With these Dobinson's 701s on the back of a 150 or a 120, generally you're okay. Depends on your tools, your variation slightly on the chassis and the body and all these sorts of things. I don't want to be responsible and tell you it's going to be okay. You said it'll be okay, Anthony. So just be careful. Ratchet, check. Once I get to getting close towards the end, I'll go ratchet. I'll take it off and on. Ratchet, off and on. It's not that hard to do. You get a system. You're not in a hurry anyway. It's all about getting it done right the first time. This has probably got to be good for at least 5 years. That's why you learn, you watch the videos, you do it yourself, you save money, you keep the vehicle reliable, you don't have any problems, then you don't have any stress, happy days, right? When you're finished, these, yes, they go all the way to the ends of the thread. You don't need to crank it really hard. As you can see, it's a nylock. It's not going to come undone on its own. Don't forget to then go to the bottom. It's a whole heap of newton meters on that. You can look it up in the book. It's probably 80, 90, 100 or 120, but it's a bit of a few duggers on number 2 on the Ryobi gun without overdoing it and snapping it off, of course. So it's a balancing act to know whether it's with hand, with ratchets and spanners and rattle guns and torque settings. Some people are good at it, some aren't. Some people just hit the button and go for it. And most of the time they get lucky and everything's over tightened and nothing breaks. Every now and then something breaks, right? So I think that pretty much covers everything on the vehicle. As far as all that goes, make sure the spring's in top and bottom. We said that. Sway bar bracket on, don't cross thread it. Put your brake line in, your ABS sensor lines and all that. Top and bottom of the shocker, and that pretty much completes the job. Of course, don't forget to put your wheels back on and torque up those wheel nuts. 120 newton meters is what we're doing now. We covered what tools to use. This is what I mean about the little standard impact driver, a bit of an old one, well over 10 years old, still going hard. It's been used and abused and thrashed, and it just keeps going. This is mainly for the wheel nuts or anything this can't undo. From memory, this does 40 newton meters tightening up. Doesn't mean I go duggers all the way, and I've been using it, like I said, a long time, so I know where it's at. I've got a new brushless one there. It's got more duggers, it's got more power. It is hard to get used to compared to this one, so obviously even I've got to be careful. Tools used, okay, springs. So these ones on the left here, right? I'll give you some specifications as I said I would. On the left, these are the 325s. Don't worry about the thicknesses too much, because thickness doesn't mean that much about a spring. It's more got to do with how it's wound and the spacings in between, right? The more space you've got, right, the firmer the spring's going to be, right? So this is a 325. That's not what it's all about. Thicker spring steel makes a difference as well, but more to the point, like I said, the more gap you've got there, the more the spring's standing up, the harder the spring's going to be. So 325, it's 420 millimeters long. It's going to give you 50 mil lift with no load. And as you load it up, it's going to go down pretty easy in comparison to the other options, which is why we don't use it. This vehicle, he wanted a comfortable ride was priority. And you know what? It was never loaded up more than water level, one person traveling. So they did the job. Here's a cheap set of springs. What are springs now? These, I've even forgotten. What are they, about 400 bucks a pair, or are they 435? Anyway, these are going to be, what, about 150 bucks for the pair of 325s. If anyone wants a cheap 2-inch lift, let me know. Got them here, pick up only. I'm not going to be sending them. If you're around Victoria somewhere, 325s for sale. 50 mil lift, 420 long. Okay, the 327s, which we haven't got here in this picture, which were the most popular spring, but things are about to change. They're 410 in height, same as these are the 329. So you've got the 325s, the 327s that are not here, the medium most popular spring, and the 329, which is what we're looking at here. Okay, the 325s, they made 420 long because of the softness of them. They needed to be a little bit longer to get the 50 mil without any load, and it doesn't take much weight. Fill up your fuel tank and you might even be under 50. The medium spring that's not here, the 327 and the 329, both 410 millimeters long, so 10 millimeters shorter. So shorter spring doesn't mean lower vehicle. These springs right here, these are responsible for the highest priority you've ever seen. That was our 2022 GX 150. Even loaded up, it sat up really high. These springs are not going anywhere. They're sitting here. These are some magic springs for when you want to really load things up. I'm not sure if they're going to go into our 2013 150 yet, because I'm trialing these other new springs, which everybody's wondering what they are and is going to want some by the time they know the details, right? So they're not listed as part of the standard, you know, suspension. You've got your 325s, 327s, 329s. That covers all your 120 Prados, 150 Prados, probably some other vehicles as well, but that doesn't really matter, you know, FJs and a few other cars as well, probably, right? So an FJ, it might be lighter in the back and you might want a 325, so this could work for you. Or if you've got a short wheelbase 150 Prado, you know, the shorties, or if you've got no load, right? But if you want to get a good 50mm lift clearance, that's the maximum legal lift without wasting money on, you know, compliance and engineering and all that sort of thing. 50mm lift is all that's all you need anyway, right? So 327 traditionally gave you about the 50mm lift. You could have a bit of load. My spec is, I'll say, I'm not going to give you a number really, because the more weight you add, the lower it goes, and the more you take away, the higher it goes. It's simple, it's a spring. So I'm going to say 50mm with 100 or 1 to 200 kilos in the back. You might still, if you're lucky, have 50mm lift with a 327, but not likely. You're probably going under 50mm a bit. You might have 60 without any load. You might have 40 when you put 200 kilos. Something like that as an example. If you get the suspension kit from me by texting on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m, I do all the spring selection. Lots of questions in text messages. Send me photos. Give me a picture of your vehicle set up. After you've paid for it, then I'll spend some time and make sure we get the spring selection best we possibly can with what's available, right? So 327 was very popular. 329, it was rare. But I'm finding with the 120 Prados, weight in them, 329, that's 329, sits really well. I wouldn't want any less, right? I'm not going to measure it up right now, but it's not going to be any more than 50mm lift. It's got the storage system in the back. There's no rear bar. There's heavy-duty side steps. There's fuel tank guards and that from K-On, that sort of thing. So a little bit heavy, yeah, but 329 is definitely in the 120s. But in the 2022 150, we found it was very high at the back, which is why I've selected this spring. Can't remember the number. I'm not going to quote the numbers in this video because there's two new numbers that people get wrong, and I might even get wrong. And I don't really want people going crazy putting them in yet because it's in R&D testing. But what I'm going to tell you is this spring here, and if you want to read off the label and work it out, that's the other tip actually. Don't rip off your labels because we're going to go, what springs are in there? What are in there, right? These springs are like 329s. Same specification except they're 20mm shorter, okay? So these should sit really well. Bit of R&D in this vehicle. It's the first time personally I've ever used these. I think I've got a customer that used them, worked out really well for him as well. He didn't want to be too high, but he's not too heavy, so I think he's got nearly 50mm anyway. But we're going to get some more of these into vehicles. I think they're going to work really well. Why do I like them? I think they're paired better to the monotube. I think it's a bit softer valve. It's very comfortable. It's a bit softer compared to the twin tube, so if you haven't got a lot of weight, it works really well to have a heavy spring together to hold that weight up and to offset the comfort of this, and I think it balances out really well. So 329s with these is all I really want to use, and my selection would be the 329 that's on the bench over there, or the 20mm shorter option, which is this one, and there's another one that's another 20mm shorter again. Now you can get some other part numbers in the 327, the medium spring, that is also 20mm shorter and 40mm shorter, and a lot of people might want these for towing to give it a little bit of lift, not much, but just firm up the ride. That could be this spring. It could be another 20mm shorter one, which would be technically 10mm lift with a bit of load, whatever. So there's a number of variables there. I can't really fit it all the yak into this video. Check out the suspension playlist. This is a 20mm shorter 329. I'll give you, once we get on the ground, I'll measure it all up. Maybe not in this video, so subscribe, turn the bell on. We'll let you know how it went. We've got to give it time to settle in, to see what the drive's like. There's a couple of other vehicles I've got out there with a 40mm shorter spring. I think it's turning out really good for if you just wanted a little slight toe lift, but maybe it's not quite high enough for most people once they load up the vehicle. So we need to gather all that info, and we're going to give you the update. And in my opinion, like I said, the three springs I want to use is the 329, the half a 329, and the minimum 329. I don't really want to know about 325s at all, and 327s, I'll still use them, but depending on use. Now, when I say that, I don't care about flex. I just want the heaviest spring, 329, whatever, because it's all about carrying the load. Then this spring, whether it's 20mm short or 40mm shorter, is the best choice, right? Because a firmer ride's always better, safer, especially if you're towing. Now, if somebody said to me, I never tow, and I want a good 50mm lift, but I've got no weight and I want comfort and that sort of thing, that's where we're going to talk 325s, okay? So anyway, I know lots of information. It's lots of talking from mine. It's lots of information for you. Watch it again and again a few times. Check out the suspension playlist. See if you can get your head around it. Otherwise, just contact me when you're ready and I'll get my head around it and we'll make it work for you. Thanks for watching. Doesn't bother me if you get the Dobinsons suspension from me or direct from Dobinsons, whatever. It just doesn't bother me. Happy days. I'm here to help if you want it. I can organise the kit, actually. Well, I shouldn't say about the special, the Black Friday special, but there's a bit of a special on right now as I speak, so hopefully I can get this video out in time, so that, but it might not work out. Anyway, we'll see. Too many videos. I could drop 10 videos a day. All right, see ya.